great talk with my good friend Patrick McGinnis, an entrepreneur, an author, a lecturer, much more. Really interesting, wonderful, insightful story he has. He's most famous for the inventor of the word FOMO, and he has a great way of using that to look at professional and personal lives in a great way of seeing the world. I think the all be happy moment really is that the more we understand the nature of the things we want, right, and the truth about them, we can find happiness a little more quickly.
Okay, so I like the plants.
Yes, you called them out before.
They're plastic. Sorry.
Very much.
I don't mean to. This is the magic of television. They're beautiful, though. I mean, like, they'll never die on you.
Yeah. No, we tried that a couple of times. It's not our strong suit. But I think eventually I'd like to make some changes in the studio. Maybe even
That's
get rid
very
of
cool.
This table. Have you been here before?
To this studio? Yeah, you showed it to me.
I showed it to you.
Yeah,
That's
when
right.
we first met. But I walked by and peeked in, but like I've told people about it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Well, it's nice when you spread the word.
it'd be nice if you could actually rent this out for like if it's an apartment for $3,000 a
That
month.
is a part we could.
That's an
yeah.
idea.
Hey, we built a business out of here. You can live in here for sure. For sure. Well, there is that hotel that has that glass room in the lobby that I think
had
they'll
no
let you
idea.
stay in it for free if you can make it the whole night. But it's
In
no
New York
shades
City?
or anything. I don't know where it is. But no shades, anything. It's you. You're on display in the main lobby.
I mean, it really plays.
A free
if you're-
night and
If
a-
somebody's a narcissist, it's like a dream come true.
Yeah. Have you ever met a real... I see people are
Narcissist?
narcissistic, but
I'm sure I have.
yeah. Like
I
right-
see one in the mirror every day. Just kidding. Yeah, I know several.
Right. Because that's actually like a trending theme I see. People
Yes.
sort of calling out. You know, there's something on your website, actually, it's an interesting take. Harnessing words for the, I think, enhancement of...
Oh, you're talking about my
humanity.
bio.
Your bio.
Harnessing the power of words to improve humanity.
Yes.
Yeah, and by the way, that is like the least low key thing. I mean, that's like it sounds very highfalutin. Like when I read it, I'm just sort of like, wow.
I like it. I mean,
Thank you. I mean, it's a lot, but yeah, I believe I'm a big words person. Like words,
Yeah.
I'm very like affected by the power of words, and I'm very picky about which words I choose.
Right.
So yeah, like I was just in a meeting where we were talking about something, and I was like, you shouldn't call it that. You should come up with a new word because what you're saying is so hampered with meaning already that you can't. You need the flexibility to do what you want to do, and if you're using a term that pre-exists, people are going to have all these assumptions.
All these
coming in.
ideas, yeah.
Yeah. How did you name Laughing Man?
We
Is it from like a book or something?
Well, Salinger is one of my favorite authors. He has a story, Laughing Man, which is a great story if you haven't read it. It's out there. And that has nothing to do with coffee.
I think
or
Salinger got
anything.
canceled, didn't he? I feel like he got canceled.
But I think after the fact, because he came out, those two bios were written. And I think after the fact.
All the canceled
there was
people are now.
But he never got it.
Everybody's uncanceled. We are starting over now.
We're starting over.
I feel like it's just like, you know what I mean? It's just like there's been like a vibe shift.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure.
And that's why we're going to have Harvey Weinstein drop by for a cup of coffee.
I mean, well, okay, but this
He
is
used
what I
to
was
live
saying
around
about...
up the street. So.
He did, yes. But this is what I was saying about when you said, I guess basically words matter. But then right before that, we were talking about how I've seen the word narcissism used much more.
It's everywhere, right? Yeah.
So when I see that happen, like, so where does that come from? Who started that? Is it just is it a thing or is it?
I mean, not to delve into the world of politics, but I do think that when you have, like, Trump is being accused of that.
Right.
And then when people see that, and if they have strong feelings about a person like Donald Trump elicits, then they start to blame everything on that problem. Like everybody's going, you know what I mean? Like, it's because you think about like how many, I always like to say, if we were to eliminate all of the toxic narcissists, the world would be peaceful. Because if you think about like Vladimir Putin, I get the feeling he's a toxic narcissist. You know, some other like really terrible world leaders. You kind of have to be a bit of a narcissist to want to be a world leader, don't you?
Well, that's a good question, right? I mean, they used to say, at least one of the hallmarks of the founding fathers was they didn't really want the job. Like, they wanted to go back. They tried to keep getting rid of the job.
Right.
At some point, right, something else kicks in and you want the job. So that's an interesting question. You need something. You need an idea that you can do it better, right? You need an idea that you think you can solve a problem uniquely, right? And you're right. What's the tipping point where it becomes, I don't know, what would it be, power hungry? Is that really when the narcissism kicks in? Like,
yeah, just like you think just thinking about politics, I try to think of a politician who isn't a narcissist, and to some degree, and that's by the way, that's a term that we shouldn't throw around too lightly, because it obviously is like, it's a lot in there, and I'm not a psychologist, but who doesn't have some of those traits to be like willing, Teflon, right? Like you can't, like any insult, they just kind of keep going. Right. Like, there's a kind of like entrepreneurs kind of have. So it's interesting to look at that and to try to come up with a truly humble global leader. Like Angela Merkel kind of comes to mind. She's the one that I always think of. Yeah. But even the ones who like people think are nice, like say like a Justin Trudeau, who seems like a perfectly nice guy. Like, I mean, he seems pretty happy with himself.
Right. Right.
Also, if you write a book, you have to be a narcissist, I think.
Well, so you're talking, I mean, this is not to get too deep, but it's an interesting conversation. There's some level, we're talking about, and you're right, I don't know what the technical terms now are.
We're going to come up with a word right now. We're going to call it productive narcissism.
Productive narcissism, okay. Yeah. So that's some form of ego driving something.
Yeah.
So productive narcissism. But we need an acronym for it.
To get up every morning and do what you do and build a company.
Yeah.
You know, when people, I mean, granted, everybody loves you and loves your product, but I'm sure there were days where you were dealing with things and you're like getting beat up and you just kept at it.
Right, of course.
And there's something in that resiliency that probably maps a little bit. Because if you didn't have any self-confidence, you wouldn't do it.
Right. Well, that's an interesting question, whether or not if you do something dutifully, right, is that
benevolent narcissism?
Benevolent narcissism. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's better than productive. Productive doesn't have doesn't have vibes.
Right. I don't want to catch on, but it's on the same line, right? Of destructive narcissism, productive narcissism. So
yeah.
And again, but what I find fascinating is this word is out there, and we all know what it means. And I think you said this right. Now maybe it's got more of a technical meaning because people are diving into it. So I don't know what the new meaning is, but we're using it colloquially.
Yeah.
Somebody who really only thinks about themselves, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Yes.
At some level. So what we were talking about before is there a healthy level where you think about yourself enough to produce? And then maybe there's the true benevolent, which...
I just had a conversation today that was kind of deep with a guy called Keith Ferrazzi.
Okay.
He wrote a book called Never Eat Alone. And
Never Alone.
Never Eat Alone.
Okay.
It's about networking. Really amazing guy. And we were talking about how some people are really good at doing for others, but they never get anything for themselves. Right. Like they're almost like, and he was expressing that that shows a lack of confidence because you think your value is just helping other people, and if you never put yourself in the line, then there's something in you that you don't feel you're worthy, which I thought was so interesting.
Right. Because at some point you want them to give back to themselves. So there has to be, and what you're saying, something that says, I'm not worthy of that, of being given to, something like that. Yeah.
The people, I mean, you know, these people who are like amazing networkers and they're constantly helping other people solve their own problems, but then they'll express frustration like, well, you know, how do I monetize this? I don't ever get anything back.
Right.
And I guess what I never thought about before, what Keith was saying, is like maybe you have to look inside first and think about like, why are you doing that?
Right. What's the motivation?
Right. And that is kind of a crazy, I don't know, it's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Like I certainly will reflect on that.
Yeah. Or, you know, you see somebody, take care of a family member for a while or a period of a lot of hospitality. Yeah. And there's some point where it starts joyfully. Then it can change. Sometimes it becomes frustrating or why am I... So in there probably has you may be given too much.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean you stop giving, but you have to recharge here in some way. So that's interesting. Somebody who's not even capable of going to recharging like that. Yeah.
So many people, I just think about the way I was raised. Sorry, Mom. But like there'll be like, it's like an obligation. I come from an obligation based culture.
Yeah.
Like in Maine and French Canadian culture and where I grew up, like so many things are done, and probably many cultures have this element, but it's like, you have to do this because, like you're home, you have to see every relative. Well, I don't really want to see everybody. Well, you kind of have to, you have to do that. And I'm always like, how much of our lives do we spend doing things because we're told we have to do them?
Yeah.
There are certain people, by the way, who just do whatever the heck they want all the time. Now there's, I don't know. Like,
but they can't possibly be happy, man.
I think they're damn happy. That's the thing. Like, aren't you happy when you do what you want?
Absolutely. And the truth is, that's what, I think that level of freedom is what most people are eventually hoping for, right? Yeah. Whether it's, I made so much money, I don't need to talk to anybody, or I'm retired now, I'm done. I think everybody's looking for that level of freedom.
Right. What they don't realize, in my opinion, is that you can have that starting now. And it doesn't mean you have to be a jerk to everybody, but it means that you have to like optimize for having autonomy in the areas that matter to you. And like you can have so much money and not feel autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two things. So I wonder if I just heard this great quote from Churchill. I'm watching this great documentary on Netflix on Churchill, which I love history. I love Churchill.
Apparently he drank like
what?
He drank like a fish.
Yeah.
But still good for the quote.
Still good for the quote, and just a remarkable moment in time for this guy to come about what he did. But the quote is, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically never, 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 never surrender.
Yes.
Like never give
in or give up.
Give in, give up.
He said it at a commencement speech, I think.
Yes. And so in line with what you're saying, it's like, forget about saying I have to have enough money before I get to act freely. It's having that boundary, that willingness to say no, carve out your own perimeter, right? Where I think you get that freedom now, right? So listen, life is going to, everybody's going to have a boss, everybody's going to have a client. There's always something where somebody has to surrender and play that role. That's different. But even within that, you meet people who have a certain sense of centeredness and they just don't get moved. Like, I'm here, but you don't own me.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they're jerks or they don't help people.
No. In fact, they're often inspiring.
Yeah, well, they're happier, right? Like, I think it's like, I had this insight like a month ago, which sounds a little bit woo-woo. But I was thinking about how every day, okay, so like at a cellular level, you have we're just, cells bouncing against each other. So if you could like look at yourself in a microscope, it's just like crazy cells, right? Which is why people are like, well, there's energy and everything. Like, I guess that's why they say that. It makes sense to me. I can buy that. But depending on how you treat yourself, you eat right, you work out, whatever, you can be in harmony internally or you can disharmony. Same with how you feel about yourself, same with how you deal with other people, same how companies and countries and global, like two countries, they can be in harmony, they can be in disharmony. And it really is kind of a choice. You can choose the harmony if you want it. And if you do that, then it's going to be a lot easier. You're like water, you can flow. But people forget that they can choose that thing. You know what I mean? And I think like if you kind of think about that, you're like, I have a choice to be in harmony or not. If you do that, it's just a lot easier.
So when did you discover you could do that or learn to do that? Because you got to be taught it. I mean, people might forget it, but you actually have to be taught it first.
Oh yeah.
So it's not something you would necessarily come across. So when
also it's not like it's like a continuum, right? Like sometimes you choose it and sometimes you don't because your like ego and your emotions and stuff prevail. But when did I wow, that's a great question. I would say, I think back into like these formative moments of my life. I went through this very difficult period when I was working on Wall Street. My company was AIG and it blew up in the financial crisis and I ended up like on a heart monitor. It was bad. And I woke up one day and I was like, okay, Patrick, like you did all the things that you thought would make you happy. You got great education. You have these big jobs and all these things and you have like lots of material stuff and whatever, anything you want, you kind of, within reason. It's not like I'm Elon Musk or whatever, but I had anything, like I was like, I had all the things that I wanted or thought I wanted. And yet I was totally unhappy. And I was just like, I have spent so much energy and time barking up the wrong tree. And I think that insight was like, it really just changed everything. I had a totally different mindset on life about like I started to really value autonomy much more than I had in the past. And I think that and once you get off that treadmill,
right,
then, many things can happen, but you can never go back.
The treadmill of
the hedonic treadmill, is that what they call it?
What is it called?
The hedonic treadmill.
I don't know.
And we'd have to Google that. ChatGPT.
Is that it's like a psychological phrase or a
yeah,
physical
it's
thing?
a psychological phrase, but it's something about like this treadmill of the expectations that you think that you've been placed upon you.
I don't know what it's called, but we know what that is.
Right, and you're like, oh, I have to do these things because that's what success looks like.
Right.
Whereas when you realize that that's kind of like it's a creation, and that there's many different paths to heaven, and they can also be as profitable and other things like that. Then you're like, I've got to work at a bank versus I'm going to start a company, right? That mindset change.
Yep.
That's what happened for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. I found that here, where I used to identify myself a lot with how the business goes, all that stuff. And then there comes a certain point, and my epiphany was nobody really cares. In a good way, right? I was talking to somebody the other day. You were in Manhattan. She was saying this funny thing she does, which she's embarrassed to do in public. And I'm like, the truth is nobody cares, right? Yeah. So in New York in particular, you have this very cool thing where be you, do your thing, because everybody's doing their own thing, right? So that's one level of freedom. But the same way with just the company, we're hitting a point where I just realized nobody cares. Like, even if this becomes as successful as XYZ, it's gone the next day and nobody cares. And there's a freedom to that, I think. As soon as you get some insight into the nature of it, that's all.
To your first point about New York, this is such a great example. So like when I moved to New York, you grew up here, right? Yeah. So you're like a real guy. Yeah. So, I grew up here, and I spent the first 5 years cosplaying as a New Yorker. Like, I went out, I bought all black everything. I'd rush around and be angry at the tourists who were walking slow. I did all these things that I thought I had to do to be a real New Yorker. Yeah. And then I realized over time, the only thing you need to be a real New Yorker is just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can be yourself, then you pull it off, because this city does not have room for fakeries. They always get discovered, Anna Delvey and all this sort of stuff. They always get smelled out because you can fake a lot of stuff. By the way, nobody knows we don't live in a place where you can see what people's cars look like or the insides of their homes, or in the way you go to Miami and it's people are showing off
all on display, right?
You could be making $50 or $5 million, and you could
they might be right next to each other and you couldn't tell.
You just don't know. And so that makes it so much more important to be interesting in who you are, because people aren't judging you. That's why I love New York, because I don't want people I do not care what kind of car. I don't even want a car. But if people judge me by the car I drove, that would be whack.
Right.
Not interested.
In fact,
pass.
Here they judge you. They'd be like, why the hell do you have a car?
Yeah. We all know that cars are bad for the environment.
Right. Or just in general, but why true New Yorkers, you take the subway and
yeah.
But just lost my train of thought.
That was so profound that you've lost.
That's not good for my interview.
No.
Anyway, no, because you were saying the second thing was, the first thing was about New York. The second thing was we were talking about just that general freedom mindset.
Oh yeah, about
you say
it
that
doesn't
people
matter.
in general, not that it doesn't matter, you have to put value into it.
Yeah.
But just the appreciation that maybe it's the famous phrase, this too shall pass, whatever you want it to, or just, again, I take this phrase of nobody's really defining you as much by that as you think. You've done a lot. You've done FOMO.
I've done too much.
Harvard.
Too many things.
Cambridge as well?
No.
What was Harvard was
Georgetown.
One before Georgetown. Sorry, Georgetown.
Cambridge is better.
Traveled the world multiple times over. Yeah. I've written books. I've sort of seen both sides of the sort of the heavy finance world, right? Strong on entrepreneurship. So you've done a lot.
Yeah.
And you've done it well, and there's a satisfaction to that. But then you have to ask and we all do. So, and this is a question I have for you: what is next? Now, what do you want?
Don't you be putting this?
And I don't mean what next. I don't mean what's next. I mean, in the way we're talking, what is it we really want?
Yeah.
You could pick your projects now.
Yeah.
Right? You really have a strong sense of freedom and fate where you go. It's an interesting question. You know, you can even ask, so now what adds value to your life and what detracts value from your life? Those might be two different things now.
Yeah, it's okay. So a friend of mine who lives up the street over here in Soho said something really smart. He said, and this doesn't describe me per se, but it was very interesting for him. He said, I'm less interested in doing the things I want to do, and I'm more interested in not doing the things I don't want to do.
Right.
So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
For me, as I think about like, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, what's next year going to look like for me and all that sort of stuff. Is I actually do all the things I want to do. Like, I'm very happy with the mix that I have today.
Yeah.
I just want to do more of certain things. So, like, would I write another book? You know, that's something I would consider. But when I think about the common thread of the things that I do, it's a combination of working with very entrepreneurial thinkers, working with lots of ideas, and then sharing those ideas and the trends that I see, in different ways. And probably I could do it way more effectively. I do many things. Maybe I should just be way more focused.
So you seem to execute pretty well.
But I don't know. I feel like it's so easy for me. Like, I never feel like I do work anymore. Like, I worked in Wall Street. Like, I worked like a dog. Like, I know what it is to be like an employee. And now I feel like the things that I do are all my choice, and I enjoy them. And so it's funny. Like, I'm not looking to really change anything. I'm just looking to more like, how do I do those things better? How do I up my game? How do I monetize them more effectively? How do I, have bigger impact? Stuff like that. Because it is a treadmill. Everything is a treadmill. Even the things you love, they can become a treadmill, and you have to find ways to not make them into a treadmill.
Right.
You don't want to be like a victim of the thing you created.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you said impact, and what I find interesting about you is, I don't know if this is an insult these days, but you don't have a huge following. Social following, I don't think, is your metric.
No, I mean, I have a decent LinkedIn, but no, I don't have 200,000 Instagram followers. Would I like that? Sure, of course, but so I'm not going to buy it.
Right, and again, so we talk about impact, and I don't know if you need that for impact, other than whatever level of sort of practicality it gives from a business standpoint, like pure exposure. But for your message, I don't think you consider yourself an influencer in that way.
No.
But so it might be interesting to hear from you, impact versus influence in the way we know it today.
Yeah, the problem with influencers, and maybe it's interesting, not a problem, but here's my take on this thing. To really build that kind of following, you have to have a message that's really simple. And I've always
talking about even as a thought leader, you're saying, or
think
or
about
even the brand of an influencer.
Most people who are influencers that are in the thought leadership space or whatever, or they choose one thing and they just talk about it all the time, every day.
Right.
And I don't have the attention span for that. I think that sounds very boring. Right. So I don't want to do that. The other thing is you have to be extraordinarily reductive. How do you distill these things? So and I have a couple friends who've gone big on TikTok, right? And they make these kind of videos that are them dancing around, talking about, I don't even know what the hell. I just don't want to do that.
Right.
I remember early on when I started doing this work, I had no social following at all, right? I had zero. And so I built something over time. But people were well, you have to be on Snapchat, and I was I don't want to do that. So if you don't, you have to, it's like a full-time job just to do that, to be a TikToker or something. And maybe I could have tried it, but I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it would be totally inauthentic for me to do that. I'm much more interested in I guess, and I always talk about this with my agent though, is I tend to the people who interact with my content, it's much more, I'm going to say this without sounding a total jerk, but it's not mass enough. And by the way, I have nothing, I'd love to make it more mass, right. But it's kind of to do that, you have to kind of, I think about these books, the guy Mark Manson and with the F word in it, it's the
the sleep one?
The subtle art of not giving.
Yeah.
It's really smart what he did, and by the way, he sold a lot of books. But that wouldn't be what I would do. So I've always been I've always thought about impact in terms of Like my ideas are complex, but when people meet with them, like they do resonate deeply. And so I do have like a strong, dedicated group of people who are consuming the content that I create. And I think having that, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point of reducing things down to obviously a point people can digest it in the particular medium. So it's TikTok in 3 seconds, right? If it's a book talk, it's a different audience. But there is a point where people have to have the ability to read things that are not reduced to their simple.
I don't know. I just don't enjoy. I just can't do. Right. I'm not. It's not something I'm good at.
Right.
And I see people do it, but I also like it. It can be really. It's hard to pull that off. Some people do it really well.
Yeah.
Like an Adam Grant. Like I think Adam has nailed it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But a lot of, I don't know. I just. I mean, would I like to have 1 million Instagram followers? Yeah. So please follow me at Patrick McGinnis.
I love it. Okay, so with all the projects you have, you've spoken about entrepreneurship, you've spoken about FOMO, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, you can speak on a lot of topics. What is the thrust now? What is the message? What's the thing that you're talking about now, I guess?
So the things that I talk about, what do I focus on?
Yeah.
FOMO is a big one, right? So, I invented the word FOMO. It's a very big word that you can use in many different contexts, right? I, for example, gave a talk last month in Mexico City, which is super fun, in Spanish, all about the future of the connected television. Paramount asked me to come down and speak to their advertisers. And I used the lens of FOMO to analyze how we have connected televisions with streaming and all these channels, like how that's developed using FOMO as a lens for that. So there's a lot you can analyze industries. You can talk about the persuasive power of FOMO. You can talk about marketing. So a lot of times what I will talk about is like FOMO as a lens of persuasion, or it's a really interesting to look at through the lens of decision making as well. So that, and then I have another kind of area I talk about, which is I wrote a book called The 10% Entrepreneur, How to Be an Entrepreneur Without Quitting Your Day Job. What I call entrepreneurial thinking, which is, how do we think like entrepreneurs in all aspects of our lives?
The FOMO.
Yeah.
I know that I didn't want to get too deep into it because I don't know. I'm sure you talk about it all the time. So I don't know, maybe it's like, another interview where we're talking about it.
Man, you can talk about FOMO as long as you want with me.
But what I'm curious about is you've been working with it for so long. I know it on your basic curricular level, right? What don't I know about it? Like what's the more refined definition or way to look at it? That takes me a little beneath the surface.
So FOMO, I invented it as a joke. I wrote a satirical article in my school newspaper, my business school, because I went to 7 birthday parties in one night, and I was like, this is not natural. And why? Because I would get to one and I would go to the other one. I'd walk in, look around, and I'd be like, I really want to, that other one sounds fun. Somebody texted me, like, it's great. And then I'd go there and so on and so forth. And I was like, this is weird. Not normal. And so I did that. And, but when I wrote my book and did a bunch of research on psychology, because there's tons of clinical psychologists who've written about FOMO, it's kind of incredible. So you can find a lot. It's a real thing, and it's so I did a lot of research and thinking and talking to people, and I came up with this definition, which is FOMO is 2 things. It has 2 elements: aspiration and herd. The aspirational element of FOMO is that we all want bigger, better, faster, more. That's we're maximizers.
Right.
We're maximalists, and so when we see something that appeals to us in that way, then we want it, and so we have this anxiety that. We don't have that thing and we want it because if we have that thing, our life will be better.
Right.
And there's a bunch of reasons for that. It's in our DNA. The earliest humans, the FOMO served them because survival. Yeah. Exactly. Like what's the best food? What's the best shelter? What's the best water? All the things. The other side is herd.
Herd as in the herd or being heard?
HERD.
Okay.
Be heard, which is the idea that, everybody's doing something. I don't want to be left out, right? Yeah. We're social animals.
Right.
If we were the earliest humans, if one got kicked out of the group, he was cooked. right? I mean, you needed the group. And so when you think about those two together, that's what drives FOMO. Now, what happens
Meaning trying to reduce both of those.
Correct.
Right. Or maximize
the
one
aspiration.
and reduce the other, yeah.
But of course, the thing that's kind of interesting, so it's an incredible motivator. And that's why FOMO can be really good, because FOMO is that little tap on your shoulder that there's something in the world that you haven't done that you should maybe experiment with, like run the marathon, whatever. The problem with FOMO, and the reason why it's so pernicious, is because the aspirational elements, it's not clear that those things even exist. You are telling yourself a story about how great something is, but you don't really know.
Right.
And so therefore, you may be telling yourself a huge lie and investing a lot of emotion into a lie. And that's where the problems begin with FOMO.
Got it. And so and then the side of the herd.
Yep.
How does that relate to, so we tell ourselves a lie about that.
Yes.
So one is inherently more powerful than the other, the herd, because that is instinctual.
So the herd bit, the herd bit is about motivation. Like, why are we doing something? Is this really your dream? Because if it were, why didn't you do it before? No, a lot of times it's an externally, you're losing agency and you're outsourcing your thoughts to the herd.
Right.
But the reason why they're so powerful is that your brain is going crazy, because the aspirational elements of FOMO, release dopamine. So you have that pleasure center of your brain that's getting primed, because you're like, it's going to be so good when I get this thing. And the herd bit is the epinephrine, the adrenaline, the fight or flight. And so you add those together, and it's very powerful on your brain. Now, the thing about it all, when you talk about which one is more powerful, so the thing is that your FOMO is never like 50-50 herd aspirational. Like some things will be very aspirational, like, clothing or something, like something that's promoted by an influencer. Oh, I love that person, whatever. That taps more into the aspirational. Herd is like flash sales or something like that, where like you want the thing, sure, but it's like the thing that's really driving it is that like you have a limited time window, and if you don't move, you won't get it.
Got it. And so you'll be missing out on what everybody else.
Yeah.
And so is FOMO? Do you approach FOMO as a just a unique way of looking at a situation, and you can look at it with a bunch of different lenses?
Yeah.
Or does FOMO answer something that we haven't sort of been able to answer in human behavior before?
So FOMO as a human behavior is, it's not new. It's funny. This is crazy. So listen to this one. There was a comic strip called Keeping Up with the Joneses. Okay. You know that phrase?
Yeah.
In the New York Globe, like 100 years ago. And, we've always had that, Keeping Up with the Joneses. Now, the fun thing about Keeping Up with Joneses is that it was about a family living in New York, and their next door neighbors, the Joneses. And the dad of the family, his name was Aloysius, was always like obsessed with what the Joneses were doing. The crazy thing is Aloysius's last name, McGinnis. Okay. Same last name as me. Spelled with one less N, but like, wow. So it's like a sign. Like somebody discovered this and wrote a paper about it, which is insane. Like, that's crazy. Some guy, like a professor, who
made the connection with you?
Yes, he made the connection. Before I didn't even know the guy. I was Googling myself once and I found it, and then I reached out and I was like, you, my friend,
that is fun.
Are awesome.
And the connection with FOMO.
He made the connection between the comic strip, and then he wrote a piece about keeping up with the Joneses and FOMO.
Right, and made the connection with you.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then he didn't even reach out, and I reached out to him. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and I have some of the comic books, but it's like deeply problematic because it's 100 years old, and there's stuff in there that's just like not okay.
That's actually thought where you were going. I was like, oh, what?
No, when I opened it up though, I was like, oh boy, this is tricky. Yeah. Like I can't show it to people.
Right. But it's a good story.
But anyway, why do I bring this up? That was like a little bit of a detour.
Because we were talking about
a digression, as Holden Caulfield would say.
Well, we were talking about, is FOMO just a unique way of viewing it, or is it part of who we
are? Yeah. And I think we know that. Why does it matter? Like, why are we talking about it, right? It's because in the digital world, where so much is unclear, like people had FOMO 100 years ago, but like, say you're like dating, right? You had like 3 people you could date. You know, nowadays you have an app with unlimited.
Yeah.
And so it's our digital world and the way that we are live within it has made FOMO into, you know, everything uses FOMO against us. And if you think about marketers' work, it's all FOMO. So I see it as a lens to see the world. And why does it have value? Because once you understand how it works, then you can decide whether you want to play or not.
And also how people are working, right? I mean, under those two matrices of basically trying to get the most they can and have the most people agree with that decision is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And so I'm even thinking, so personally, let's say, okay, because I like how you said you can use it, business, relation, you know, in the personal life, how does this come to hurt us or benefit us? You know, maybe in a relationship, let's say, how might that play out in a good or bad way?
Well, in a relationship, having a little FOMO can mean you're not being very faithful.
Right. Okay.
But what it probably means, by the way, is that, and this is really like the issue. When you have FOMO, you are so focused on what you don't have that you are not appropriately valuing what you do have.
Yeah.
And then the thing that you think that you want may not be real.
Yeah.
And so therefore you are living in a fantasy world, which isn't very helpful.
But this gets back to the first thing you said, which was, you know, we were talking about where do you learn in life the nature of things? Mm-hmm. Where do you get the inspiration or the knowledge to say, you know what, this isn't as important as I thought it was. So it's the same thing. You know, where is somebody taught the lesson that the thing they're seeking may not be really, and that's human evolution, and that's a whole journey. But you're not often taught that lesson in the beginning. You got to find that out.
You have to live it. And that's why lived experience lessons FOMO.
Yeah.
Or at least it makes you a better. So in the aspirational part of FOMO, lived experience should make you much better at parsing whether something really is something you want or not. Right? Because you're like, it's like this. If you've been to like a gazillion parties and you're at home on a Friday night and you see there's a party and you're like, well, you know, I know what that is. Like, and frankly, like, I don't want to do that right now. I'd rather watch, you know, Love is Blind Argentina or something, which is a very good show. But the herd mentality part is harder to beat.
Okay.
Right? The desire for inclusion, especially as you get older, and maybe you have less going on, and you know, kids are gone, or you're thinking about mortality. You know, that's why people have midlife crises.
Right. Crises. Yeah. Yeah. On a total side, I'm a big Love is Blind fan as well.
I've been watching. Habibi.
I haven't seen the Argentina
is so good.
one.
Habibi, the Middle Eastern one.
Yeah.
Change your life.
Yeah. And when you go and talk about FOMO, again, you can choose a lens. So you can have Paramount call you in, or you could have a relationship conference call you in and look at it in different ways.
I've spoken like everywhere from like marketing and FOMO with Bloomberg or financial markets. I've done dating stuff. I've done the future of television with Paramount. I did a whole campaign with a tech company around FOMO. I made a TV commercial with them. So I've done a bunch of different. It's a lot of times I talk about it in the world of venture capital and in companies and entrepreneurship. But you can also apply it to things like, you know, what should I do with my life? Yeah. Think about young people, kids these days, right? You talk to like a 14-year-old or something and ask them what they want to do. You know what they say? I want to be an influencer, or I want to be a football player, soccer, whatever. Right. But like we all know that, you know, it's, you know, we can't all be influencers. So it's just interesting to think about these. How do you convince a 13-year-old that that's a good or a bad idea, right? And what is the lens they're doing? And so there's a lot of stuff that I've done around that.
It's interesting because I have a 14-year-old daughter, 10-year-old son, and I don't know if she wants to be an influencer. She'd like to go into two separate things. She'd like to go into fashion, be a fashion designer, and no problem. And I think she sees those as two distinct things, but she certainly lives in the world of influencers. Yeah. And I say to her, listen, you know, if that's what you want to do, one, have a voice, like come up with a clear thing of what you want to say.
Yes.
See if it's valuable, make sure you're offering something of use. I said, but then also appreciate those guys spend a lot of time for that final thing you see. So I would have no problem, and I've told you this, go make your videos, but put it together. Like put in the time to produce the thing, and that's a skill and time well spent. And then you're working. It's not just the end product of the girl with the bag who's on a fake.
Well, that's the process.
Plane,
so you've just laid out the process, which is when there's something that's giving us FOMO, what I tell people to do is like go try that thing in a limited way.
Beautiful, yeah.
Like, for example, running a marathon. I saw the marathon. I went to watch the New York City Marathon 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I loved it. I had never been before. It's so weird. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. And I ran.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a crazy runner, but I ran.
How long did you train? Like, you decided you're going to do it in that year?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't like go run it the next day, right? I started with like a 10K, and then I worked my way up so that I knew I had enough data to know that I would not mind training and that I would find training to be a positive experience. And so I did it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that's it. I'm never doing it again. It was like really hard. But that's what I tell, it's sort of like, because what happens when you try to do the thing, you get the data that you can appropriately value the aspirational piece, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the play, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I even take it one step further. There's a quote, and I'll have to
you're
fact
gonna
check
give me some quotes? Ooh.
But basically, it's knowledge kills fear.
Yeah.
And that's basically, and it's funny. So you have the fear of missing out, and you have this component, which is basically what you're calling information.
Unless the call really is coming from inside the house, then.
Yeah, but even then I would say now that you know that's actually the situation, you're now meeting reality.
Yeah,
right?
It's true. You can take an action.
Exactly.
Versus the abstract fear. Right. The amorphous, we don't like to live in uncertainty.
Absolutely. So I thought that's interesting. That's what you're saying.
I like that.
That the information, whether it be, I now have a little bit of knowledge about running, which again gets back to the interesting thing of, I guess to FOMO. Can you kill FOMO completely?
Well, I don't think it's a good idea.
Interesting. Okay.
Because we are aspirational human beings, and so we should have a little FOMO is good for you.
Right.
Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. It's a good question. Like do you think being entirely content and satisfied is good?
Yes.
But
because I think people misconstrue that you no longer have any.
Yes.
You see, and I think it's what we're talking about.
I have to change the way I ask that question because the question isn't right.
Because you had that, and that's what I was asking in the beginning. You're at a place where you take satisfaction, I think, from what I hear, in the work itself.
Yeah. You
don't get too caught up in really. I mean, there's the business around it, but the selling of it, like you're not willing to do that other component because it's not you and doesn't really add satisfaction.
And by the way, most people, even if I did that, I probably wouldn't make a difference. That's the thing. I think it's like the FOMO thing. Like I tried some of that and it didn't matter.
Right, exactly. So I think there is a line where it doesn't mean you don't have a desire to write, but you now know, I think, and this is maybe where we're going, whatever the success or failure of that book is, it's still not really going to kill the reason you did it.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think what happens, it's a great point. Well done, you. Such a smart guy. The thing that, I guess because I do a lot of things, like I'm not a bet the house on one thing kind of guy. Like I have these friends who write a book and then, putting out a book's really hard. Like it is so damn hard. And very few books really, really hit big. How many James Clears are there out there? Not. But when you sell a book to a big publisher, you start to have these dreams that you're going to be the next James Clear or whatever. And most people I know who've written a book are deeply disappointed and are like, "Oh my God, why did I do this?"
Just the pure sales of it, distribution of it.
Yeah, and they put so much into it and they didn't get what they wanted. And I've never felt that way. Like my books did fine. I mean, they're not like I wasn't a New York Times bestseller because that's kind of bullshit anyway. It's all racket. But it's so stupid. But I loved every minute of it, and they did reach a lot of people. But like I didn't have some goal like I must do this because I wasn't in it for that. I don't know. And maybe...
No, I think that's it. What you're in it for, I think. And I think, getting back to what you started on the Wall Street thing, that's the point. Over time, what you're in it for changes. And I think that makes a big difference. I wonder, it's funny, if you took one of those authors who didn't sell well, but there were 5 million people who could genuinely come up to him and say, because I think you're right, it's impossible to write a book, that is amazing that you did that. Like, truly and sincerely told him, I am so impressed that you did that, because that is a hard thing to do. And they meant it, and he knew they meant it. I wonder if that would ease the disappointment. Meaning, it's just interesting, I never thought of it. There's clearly a sales thing. People wanted the money, but there is an aspect where we know we can't control that.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of disappointment, fine. But if then you had that, I wonder if that'd actually be more what you were looking for.
Yeah, I can tell you that, I mean, at least for me anyway, having somebody, like I had this guy write me last week from Russia on Instagram, and I guess he uses like a VPN because it's not allowed there. Right. And he read the FOMO book, and he sent me a picture of it, and he just wanted to chat, and he's like telling me he loves fishing. And we've been going back and forth. And I just found that to be so cool, because this is somebody who like found meaning in this thing that I created, who I will probably never meet. But I've had other people, like I had this is crazy, but really it's kind of amazing. I was in Azerbaijan for something, and I can't
talk about it.
No, I was there for some work. I'm not doing anything naughty in Azerbaijan, but this is a great story. So I was in Azerbaijan, and I was somewhere else before. I think I was in Croatia, whatever. And I was doing something with the World Bank. Yeah. And when I go to countries, sometimes I tell the State Department, and they will set up a speaking event for me. It's something we've done for years. And I just it's like probably got 100 people, but I just like to talk about my ideas, and I like the fact that we're spreading some positive messaging in collaboration with our government. I feel like it's a good thing for everybody. So I like doing it. And I always have fun. It's interesting, right? So this kid started messaging me. He found me on Instagram, and he messaged me, and he was in Baku, and in Azerbaijan. And I was like, "Oh, you come to my event?" And he's like, "I don't know. I'd really like to go, but I don't know if I'm going to be allowed." And I was like, "Dude, give me your number. Like, we'll put you on the thing. Like, what's your name? Give me the things. Here's my number. You can WhatsApp me if you can't get in, all the things." So he ends up coming, and he's like 14, 15 years. I had no idea. It was like a really young man. And everybody else was in their 30s, 40s. And he asked the best question of the day, like bar none. And then we stayed in touch, and like this kid now, I'm helping him apply to college. Like, I wrote him a recommendation because we stayed in touch, and like he's a total rock star. Got a full scholarship to high school.
That's amazing.
Like, he's done so well, and like it's just like I would have never met this guy. And like I always say, like, when you're you're running things back home, like you just like don't put me on the board, right?
Yeah.
But and it's amazing, and that happens all the time, that I have people who read or experienced or whatever, listen to the podcast, who reach out, who become people that I get to know.
Yeah.
And I find that, like, I just love that. That's like impact. It keeps you, because if you told me, like, I have a friend who like figured out a way, like, I don't know, you get a service or whatever. He made one of the bestseller lists, even though the book unfortunately was awful. I hope he's not listening. It was really bad. Like, I was shocked at how bad the book was, and he didn't do it. He wanted to just get it so the credential. And like, I don't think he's ever written another one. He's never done anything more like that. He just did it. He was optimizing for like, I can say this and then people will take me seriously or whatever.
Right.
I never cared about that.
Yeah.
Wow, that was long. Sorry.
No,
you can edit that down.
No, it was great. It was great. Your birthday is January 3rd. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So
how do you know that?
I know things. Happy pre-birthday.
I feel so honored.
But you have January 3rd and New Year's, so you got.
What do I get from wishes? Laughing Man on my birthday?
What would you like from Laughing Man?
A coffee with you would be perfect.
Let's do it. That
would be nice.
That I can give you, no problem. That'd be my treat. But so you need birthday resolutions and birthday wishes. What's 2025? What's the sound?
I don't do resolutions, my friend.
Okay, not the resolution. The sound. What's the impulse for 2025?
Oh, it's such a good question. So I've been thinking about this, actually.
Yeah.
I had this very interesting thing that happened to me this year. So this summer I was working on our new company really hard. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed around July, August, and I worked. And like, I got like no traction
on this project.
Yeah, I was working hard, and I worked hard, and I got to September, and I was like, this sucks. I'm working so hard, and I'm seeing like I'm like pushing a noodle. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just like rah. Yeah. And then I had a bunch of personal travel, and it was I had a conference, and I took my mom to Europe, so I kind of was like not working for like 3 weeks, which is unusual for me. But I was kind of burned out, so I was happy to step away. And the minute I stopped trying, all these things happened. Yeah. It's always like that. And I was like, damn it. Like, it was awesome, but I was like, oh, man, like, that is so weird. And so what I would say is coming into 25, I want to do, like, I have a lot of FOMO, right? And I tend to do too many things. I'm trying to be, like, I feel like I've been able to go like this and just, I have a narrower scope. So I was working on my goals, which I'm making for next year, and they're very specific in terms of the areas I want to play in. Right. And it makes it a lot easier. Last year, I remember a friend of mine said to me, Patrick, it's easier to do one thing really well than to do 5 things really well. And I don't think I'll ever be a one kind of thing guy, but I know the things, like I have a very clear sense of like where I need to have my energy this year. And that's really good. I've had years where I had no idea, by the way. So like this is new.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to play therapist for a second because I heard something interesting. Oh. This is not real therapist. What I'm saying is... No.
I like, should I lay down over here?
But what you're saying is, what I heard was you said, okay, I'm focusing this. And in our brief conversation on FOMO, what I began to understand about it, in order to do this, you have to let go of a lot.
Yes.
I think so. I'm going to whittle down what I think the sound for you for 2025 is let go.
Oh, it's like my mantra?
I think so. I think that's really what you're saying. You said I whittled it down. There's focus, but you can only focus if you have the strength and the knowledge to let go of the other stuff is not part of that core operative.
Yes. I think that is definitely true.
Okay.
And I would add in something that I do that many people do, and this is so bad.
Yeah.
I am really good. So, like, I think of email as being somebody else's to-do list for me. Have you ever heard that expression? Yeah, it's so true. Like, if I'm working on something that is important to me and then somebody asks me to do something for them, like a quick thing, like it's a work thing, but like like one of my clients will be like, do this thing. I will drop everything and do that thing for them. Yeah. I'm really good at procrastinating on my own stuff to check things off the list and feel that accomplishment. And I need to be better at batching those things for later.
Yeah, I like it.
That's also part of what I need to do. Yeah. So let go and then defer.
Let go and defer.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll work on some branding. We can work-shop something here.
No, that's great. I resonate with that.
Will you be my accountability partner?
Let's do it. We'll check-ins.
Yeah.
Man, I'll talk to you anytime.
I'll be your accountability partner. What do you want to what's your big...
It's a good question.
You can't ask me that question.
No, because I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm sort of in the same boat where I think at this point it's more focus on the things that will move the needle, I think, professionally, but also personally, the tasks I want to do. This being one of them. Right. Starting this and having these conversations, is a big deal, which I'm super psyched to be doing. And so I think I resonate strongly with not finding the excuse to not, to let go of the excuse to do that.
Yes.
And it just must be I think what's the word? A bad offshoot of the kind of worlds we live in, but saying no, carving out those boundaries. And it gets back to what you were saying earlier. We were both talking about I spend a lot of time at this place called the School of Practical Philosophy. We've spoken about a lot of meditation, things like this. And that's why a lot of these threads are resonating with me, and I love to explore those. Finding that freedom, really understanding where go, build it, do it all, but somehow not be defined by it, I think is something I'd like to think about more this year,
I have a vision for you, which is, I think, and you're the second person I'm going to have said this to. The Uruguayan guy I told you, we were chatting in the cafe about it. He's a Uruguayan entrepreneur. And I said to him the other day, I was like, he's brilliant, and he's a great speaker, and he's a great guy, and he's a good person. And I was like, but he's not been super mediatic, let's say, or whatever. And I was like, I want to see, like, you're gonna be on the stages, you're gonna be telling people, you're gonna be the guy that people listen to. It's gonna happen. Like, so let's back solve. Like, what do you? So I was like, maybe like get you figure out your stage clothes or whatever, kind of image wise, like how are you gonna be like that kind of thing. Yeah. You have nice clothes. You're good. We don't need to do anything here.
This is like went all out.
I love, man. I'm going to steal that jacket. It might fit me. But I could see you like with this project and other things. Like you should be somebody that I'm hearing from more.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, what's cool about that though is it's not a full, like, we're not going to be Oprah here. But like, if you can have an element of your life where I just love the idea. Like when I get a crazy idea, I have a couple journalists, like I've written for Politico a couple times. Like I pitch Politico an idea and I'd be like, I just had this idea. I want to write an article about it. Like, would you want it or not? And sometimes they say yes, sometimes they no, but I love to just put ideas into the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm trying an article right now that I'm writing, trying to get for a publication. It's like, it is so cool. Like what a privilege, right? Yeah. And so I think I see that for you.
No, I appreciate that. That's big coming from
you. I mean, I'm sure you're doing some of that in ways that I don't even know yet, but I want to see, like, you're the future of connected TV, man.
Let's go. No, I appreciate it. And I mean, just for being so transparent, which is great. It's not a comfort zone for me. Like I can have a one-on-one, I can sit down and talk to anybody in private, but trying to now go into this whole space is not a comfort zone.
I find that, so it's so...
I don't know, maybe it's Happy People Write the Blues, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's like, a different expression of it. But it's been great.
But what's not comfortable? I don't get it. I mean, unpack that for me.
I don't like, maybe it's the social thing. I'm not big on selling myself. Like, I'm not a big put myself out there and say it's just not in my nature. Yeah. I tend to be very... deferential in situations to guests and hospitality. Maybe that's just the family and the business I've grown up in. Like it's you first, you first, you first, right? At the same time, I feel like where I do fall into that bucket you were talking about is I don't satisfy that, where that is that little calling to do this kind of thing.
It's interesting. When I started doing all this stuff, number one, I was in I did speech competitions as a kid. I was like giving speeches. Right. I was really into that.
And here's the thing, I am totally comfortable public speaking.
Right, I can tell. So I like that, but I was not comfortable. Like I remember my first website for the book, I didn't want to put my picture anywhere. Like the website, I was like, I don't think I had one picture on there. It was ridiculous. And then when I did it over later on, the person I worked with was like, dude, we need to put your picture on the front page. And I was like, oh, sure, whatever. I got over it.
Right.
You can, and I think the reason why I was comfortable, if you Googled me, there was nothing. And now I'm if you Google me, there's a lot of stuff. Right. And I used to, I think people think I'm very self-promotional probably. I'm sure they do because of what I do. But it was not in my nature at all.
Right. That's interesting.
And I don't try to be a cheesy self-promotional person, so I don't feel bad about it. But I also kind of know what I want to. I feel like my ideas. I'm very comfortable with the idea that I'm an ideas-driven person. I'm not selling you snake oil. It's not like I'm telling you get-rich-quick schemes and stuff like that. And so when you figure out that thing that you want to talk about, and it's very clear to you, it is easier. You know what I mean? So that'll come with time as you sort of identify your focus.
That's great. No, I appreciate it. That's great. That's great advice. I'm going to ask you one more thing, then I'm going to get you out of here. Thank you so much for your time. I was going to ask you at the beginning, but
what's great is I just get to walk home, and I live a block and a half away.
That's right. I keep forgetting.
Skippy.
Let's keep going. I was going to ask you before you give a talk, before you have a big moment. I told you. Is there anything you do to ground yourself, to reconnect yourself, to bring you to the moment, whatever it is that gets you to a place where you're ready? What is that?
I have a really good one. Yeah. It's so good. Vegas. You know the Vegas nerve? Not the city of Vegas.
I was like, Vegas, okay. It's an answer. Yes, I do know Vegas nerve.
So my acupuncturist, this guy Richard, who's amazing, told me I gave a really big talk this summer, like the biggest one probably I've ever given. It wasn't a talk. I was doing a fireside with somebody.
Okay.
But it was at this crazy conference called Brilliant Minds. It's like 300 people in the audience only. And it's like Trevor Noah, Reese Witherspoon, the royal family of Sweden, blah, blah, blah. And like when I walked out on the stage, all I saw was the royal family and Trevor Noah's faces. And I was like, whoa, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And I never get nervous. Ever for speaking. I don't like I can go, you can put me in front of a big crowd. I do not get nervous. The only times I've ever gotten nervous was when I did live TV hits, like when I was on Fox and Friends, actually.
Right,
if you which by the way, like with Pete Hesketh, oh my goodness. But you can see me shaking.
Yeah.
Live TV.
That's
now,
a different beast.
Now I'm okay, but the first time, you're in this big, oh my God. And then I've gotten nervous. Just not a lot of times, but this one I was really nervous because I cared so much about the people. I really wanted them to love me, and I guess that's what I'll be transparent. Like I really cared about the group of people in the room. A lot of them are my friends as well, and I just wanted to be loved.
That's so honest.
I know it's like,
great. That's what we're here for.
Paging Dr. Freud. So anyway,
you can't get to all be happy without going through this. So.
Yeah, it's all true. And so. What Richard told me to do, which I have used a ton, is and he does this to me when I go to him. So he'll be doing it to me tomorrow when I go to him. You take these two fingers like a claw and you squeeze here.
Okay.
And it hurts. However, it relaxes your nervous system. So when I have anxiety or before I give a talk, I will do this. Yeah. And it's incredible how it just brings you down.
Interesting. Is that where the vagus nerve is, in the side of the neck where you're pinching?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, listen,
and it works.
I'm not a physiotherapist, but he told me to do that, and he does that to me. It's really quite nice. So amazing. You can do that, and then do I do anything else? I don't really do. My big thing too is I'm an over preparer. Like I prepare and don't prepare. Like I don't have written speeches. Like I have a deck. And I just kind of make it up every time, like because I get bored. Yeah. So I want it to be challenging.
And you know it so well, and you can.
But I tend to. Like I move it around, and because I like to be challenged, and I want to be intellectually stimulated and not just like read the notes,
Yeah.
But what I like to do is I need to have it done several days before, and then I can relax. Like in the same way I was in college, I used to study for my exams, and I had to be ready 3 days before. Yeah. And so like the only time I get stressed out now is when I'm doing foreign language. When I'm doing a speech in Portuguese or something where I have to really prep because I really care that I don't make mistakes. Yeah. And my vocab is there. Yeah. So yeah, but this
preparation and
if you want
and nerve neck pinch.
When you give me my coffee on my birthday, I will give you a pinch on your neck, and that'll be our little trade.
Love it. Sounds good. Patrick, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Appreciate you coming by.
My pleasure.
Thank you.